Hey, what's up guys? In this YouTube video today I'm gonna try to teach you how to use Hubspot for making some crazy nice reporting.
And why is it that this reporting is so crazy nice? Is it just because that I built it and I'm a genius? No, not at all. I am not a genius. And today we're actually gonna copy one of the largest internet gurus' dashboards with these 12 KPI numbers that he's looking at every single morning to make sure that his business is on track, to make sure he's pulling the resources into the right elements of his business, and to make sure that he just becomes more and more profitable as he scales, not the other way around. So we're gonna look at Ravi Abuvala, and if you don't know him, he's a guy who created a company called Scaling with Systems. He has over 1,000 businesses served, and he is making over $25 or $20 million a year. And he became famous for starting a YouTube channel where he's showing a lot of good tips for what he's also helping his clients achieve. If you want to learn how to create dashboards like a business who's making over $20 to $25 million a year, well, then you better look at this video.
This is me as the CEO of the company. This is every number I track inside the company.
All right, so first of all, I'm not going to bore you with going through why this dashboard is just amazing, why you need to look at this data, because if you're interested in finding out why, then go and check out Ravi Abuvala's video here where he's going through why he's tracking these 12 numbers, what they mean, and what impact they have on his business and his personal life as well. In the video, he's telling us that he's looking at it every day. At some point, he actually tells us that every morning, the first thing he does is looking through the numbers, and it just gives him that instant overview of the business, where it's going. And he's also going through that it helps him a lot to take the correct decisions at the right times. So for example, if he's seeing the revenue drops at a certain point, then there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong in a dropping revenue. Is it just that they are not attracting enough leads? Is it that they are not booking enough calls? Is it that a lot of these calls aren't qualified enough? Is it that they aren't showing up to the calls? Or is it that they have those things in place, but it's the close rate? You know, there's a lot of things in the process of selling that can go wrong. And you don't know, and if you don't know, you're gonna start spending resources and time on maybe the wrong things, and it can take a while before you found out that wasn't the problem, and then you're gonna go back to square one and start somewhere else to try and figure your problem out, right? So don't hold out, just copy and paste me right here in the video, and you'll be set. Let's dive into how we're gonna create this. Well, first off, we're gonna have to create a report. We're going to go with the custom report builder. I'm going to choose my own data. Yeah, contacts is correct, which is set by standard. And we're going to go with the chart KPI, of course. Chart settings, we want to have that percentage change in comparison, so we can see if we're growing or if we're slowing down. So values, counter contacts, create date is what we're going to group them by, and we're going to do it weekly, right? Like this. Apply. And unfortunately, I can't really show you a lot of cool stuff right here. Sorry, weekly. That's wrong. It's quarterly. Yes. So we'll have the Q2, Q3 mark, and I apparently have 2 dummy contacts in here, so that's all the data I can show you right now. But I'm going to show you in the end a dashboard where the data is blurred out for a client, where I just set this up. So it works. I know, I tested it. Trust me, if you just follow this guide right here. But this is actually all that there is to this one. So I'm just going to go ahead and give this one a name. New leads. And now I do understand that there's a distinction between leads and contacts and prospects, but in this case, at least for Ravi and their team, and for the client that I have, all the contacts coming into Hubspot are all people that they deem worthy of a sales call. They should be within the range of people they want to sell to. So that means that contacts equals leads in this scenario. Otherwise, you can play around with the filters, of course, if there's differences between the contacts that you want to count in this report. Back to the dashboard. So now we have our first one created here. And next up, since it's actually fast for me to just clone this because we have the chart set to KPI, I can just clone this and save an ad, and then go into customizing it, and then swap out the data. This is just faster, I think. Instead of going to create a new report, create from scratch, choose what data it is. But I do have to go back to this one and say edit data sources, because this one is the activities we're going to be looking at. Since it is meetings we want to look at here, it's the activities, not the contacts. So I pull in the count of contacts, count of activities, sorry, and what date they were created. The activity create date. This one we put quarterly on. Make sure, yep. And that is actually this for now, but we have to go into the filters. So the filters, and here, what I would suggest doing, which works in this case, is activity type. And that is any of meeting. You could also put call in there if you want to track calls and meetings, if you sometimes just pick up the phone to call your clients, or call from within Hubspot. You can call directly from Hubspot, so it can actually log that call for you, transcribe it even, and record it if you want. But for now, I'm just going to put meetings here. And then if you have a lot of different meeting links being used, I would also put in the meeting name here, and then say what is the name of that meetings link, and then apply it. So you know the meetings link that you can create in HubSpot, where people, you can send them a link, it opens up a calendar essentially, and they can pick out a date and a time, and then put in their info, and then book a call straight onto your calendar. It's a very good feature because it helps you not do all that back and forth on the email. Like, okay, can you do that on that date? What time on that date? All that annoying stuff. You can just send them a link and say, hey man, just book a time whenever it suits you. So now we have these two set up, book calls. All right, the next one is qualified book calls. So usually people, they do like to have a distinction, of course, to sort out what calls were actually qualified and which is not. If you have a lot of sales, high volume of sales calls, many of them is going to be irrelevant for you, not qualified. They're not going to be in your target market, or they'll not be the right fit for you. And so you want to distinguish all the book calls, because if you're using a meeting link like that, where people don't have to write you first and say we want to talk with you, but they can just go straight into a calendar and book a sales call with you, well then you're probably going to disqualify a lot of those calls and sort them out. So the qualified book calls is really to give you an overview of which calls are actually worthy, you can say. So this makes sense as well when you're looking at resources spent. So if you have an ad spend, if you're running Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads, or Google ads or whatnot, or you have setters helping you to book the calls, you want to have a distinction which calls are qualified or not, to really have an idea of how your resources are being spent to get these calls. So as you saw, I cloned the previous report again, and now we have the activities, which is the primary data source, the create date quarterly. It's all there, count of activities. But so the only difference here from the book calls is actually on the filter side. I'm just gonna add one filter. I see. Actually, I have to add a data source for this one. So I'm gonna go back and gonna put on the contact data as well, so I can not only use the data from the activities and the properties there, but also all the contact properties. Because the way, now again, I haven't looked into Ravi Abuvala's HubSpot, so I have no idea how he set this up. So this is just my version, my thinking, my ideas of how he probably made this, or at least what I would do, and what I've set up for a client now as well. So I would use the lead status property. That is a standard HubSpot property, so it comes right out of the box once you buy HubSpot. That is a property already being made. And I like to just try to lean into whatever properties HubSpot has already given me, because a lot of data, a lot of time, a lot of thinking has been put into those already made properties and features in HubSpot. So what I like about the lead status is it's a drop down on the contact level, and they already have one called unqualified. So if none of unqualified, and also if there's any empty data in the lead status, what that means is on a contact, if you haven't put any lead status on them, it will be empty. So we will say, okay, we only want to see the book calls where there is a book the call and it's a sales call and it's not been unqualified. Apply. And I tested it on the other account where I have data. It works. Update existing. While we're here, actually, can I go ahead and just save as a new report so we don't have to go back? The next one is set a qualified book calls. And I just cloned the previous because it's just a slight change. It's going to be in this one. So again, I don't know how Ravi and his team is setting these dashboards up at this point. So what I was thinking about doing is, if you have setters externally to your company, let's say, and you want to know, okay, are they really making good booked calls? Then you can do the same as the just qualified book calls. It's just create date quarterly, count of activities, a chart for the KPI, and then in the filters you have that it has to be a activity type of meeting, so we don't get all activities. The meeting name, that's where it would make the difference. So let's say you would have a different meeting name of setters sales call, and what this would do is that, imagine that we're going back to this meeting links that you had for the company. You will then duplicate that meeting link and give it an internal name of setter sales call. And then you will inform your setters that whenever you have someone who's ready to book a sales call, give them the link for this meeting link, which is the setter sales call. And it's going to look the completely same. It's going to be synchronized with the same salespeople's calendars. And the only difference is internally it's going to have a different name. So that is one way that we can go about differentiating if it's the setters or if it's the internal sales team, let's say. So I'll apply that. And again, lead status, we're going to use that. Even though a setter booked the call, somebody will look at this contact and say it's unqualified. Maybe they'll even do that beforehand. Or if they're on the call and on the talk they found out they're not really qualified, then they can go into lead status and say unqualified. So it's going to count towards the total number for setter qualified book calls on your report. The next report we're going to make is the show up rate. And that of course means that we can see how many calls were booked and how many actually showed up to the meeting is what the show up rate is going to tell us. I just copied the previous one again. We have the create date quarterly, we have the count of activities, but that's not the one we're going to use in this case. Here we're going to go for outcome meeting or outcome completed count. I'm going to drag that in here. So this gives us a sum of all the meetings that has been labeled as completed on the meeting outcome. So just for you to understand, this is a meeting on the activity timeline in HubSpot on a contact, and you can see down here you have the outcome, which should say it's completed. Once you're done with your meeting, you should change that to completed, and that's going to give us an easy way to actually have it in our report who showed up and who didn't. Good. So back to this. How are we gonna, this is just a sum, so that'll just give us a number, right? It'll just give us the total sum of all meetings with a completed outcome. But instead we can go into it and into this value, and then we can choose the average, set that to %, apply that. So now that will give us a percentage of how many are completed. Going into the filters is important that we delete some of them, because here it's just important that it's unqualified or not. It doesn't really matter. It's about who showed up. Or you can do that if you want to, but I think it's probably just simpler just to leave that out. We're gonna have the activity type is meetings, just to single out the meetings, and then the meeting name of sales call, or just pretty much all those kind of meetings that you want to track it on. Maybe using meeting links for other things, just to have a client talk or something like that. And then you want to single out, this should just be the meetings that comes from the sales calls. We apply that here, and we update it. Now again, I'm really sorry I can't really show you any data on it, so you're probably wondering, is this even working? But I promise you again, it's working, and I'm going to show you in the end a blurred out image of a client I just set this up for, to show there's actually some data coming through. The next one is sales calls. I'm going to these ones. Good. Sales taking calls. We're not going to use the create date for this one. Here I would say we should use the activity date. So when the activity is taking place instead of when it was created, right? Because you want to have a number showing how many calls has the sales team taken already. So that means they have to be past taking the meeting. If we set in the create date, it will give us a count of all the calls that are just being created. But sometimes, let's say somebody books a meeting now, but they booked it for next week. I mean, like they went into the calendar and they picked a time next week, right? If I put in the create date instead of the activity date, then it would pull the measure from when the booking was made and not when the booking is happening. Hope that makes sense. When the meeting is taking place. You guys are clever. You understand it. Good. And we do the quarterly as well. Count of activities. And then for the filters, we're gonna have our, make sure we have all the meeting links names here. Unqualified is not really, like, you could do that if you just want to see the taken calls that were qualified, but I'm guessing you want to see just all the calls that sales were on, which would make sense for this. So meeting outcome. We're gonna have that as well, because we're gonna see all the ones that are completed like that, right? That's gonna filter out all the calls that were no-shows, rescheduled, I don't know what else the situation could be, but this will make sure that we see all the calls have been taken by looking at when the meeting was supposed to happen or happened, and then that the meeting was set as completed, so we know they were on the call and they label it as completed afterwards. For the next one, calls to be taken, I actually want to clone the new leads. And calls to be taken. And we need the contacts actually to be primary data source, and then the activities to be secondary. So I go back and I say contacts is the primary, and then scroll down and make sure activities is on there. And now I don't need to group them by, because at least in Ravi's YouTube it seems like just a number. You can see the count of contacts. He deleted the numbers, of course, but you can see this count of contacts in the video. And then the filters will decide if the calls are to be taken. Good. So let's get some stuff in here. We're gonna need the type. We want the activity type to be meeting. I want the meeting name here. If you see me like looking a bit to the side, it's because I have the dashboard set up over there just to save myself some time to see what the filters it was, so I don't have to invent it all from scratch again. Save us all some time. Good. Sales call. Now, make sure you get the naming right, or else it's not going to work. This is just a dummy account, so I'm just putting in the name as I remember it. Maybe I'm doing it wrong, but make sure you get this right. The meeting start time is more than 0 days from now. Okay, go ahead. And we want to use the outcome as well. That is none of no-show, cancelled, or completed. Scheduled or rescheduled are outcomes that are open. Where a meeting is empty, we're going to include that as well. Super. So these were the filters to have the calls to be taken. You can see count of contacts is displayed here. If you've seen the YouTube video, then it's the same. Show up rate, let's clone that. Create date quarterly, correct. Because these are the deals that are being created in here. But actually it's wrong because I have to remember what data we're pulling from. Right now it's activities. So let's go and edit those data sources. Make sure it's the deals that is the primary. And that is actually, I think, the only data point we need for this one. So now we got the deals as the primary data source. Great. So now we can have the count of the, no, wait a second. Let's do the create date. Create date, we're going to group them by. And now we're going to use one is closed one numeric. All right. So this one is a sum of all the deals that are closed one. So this is the one we're going to use. It's probably giving me a problem here because I have no deals, I have no data, no pipelines in this test account, but trust me, it works. What we're going to do is, instead of sum, we're going to do average. The format should be in percent, in percent. Yes, good. Go in and do a filter. We are going to use a filter. The only one we're going to need is pipeline. So make sure you have the pipeline here. Make sure you set that to your primary pipeline. If you only have one pipeline, it doesn't really matter. But if you have multiple, which you probably do, if you're in need of a dashboard like this, then you'll have it here. So here we go. This is how we do the close rate. All right. Next up, we're gonna have the sales closed deals. We're gonna clone the close rate, primarily because that is set up with the deals data. So we're gonna use that closed. Sorry, I had my fan on. I have just like a small fan sometimes when it gets hot. All right, sales closed deals. How we're gonna do this is pretty easy. We're just going to change this one back to sum, this one back to auto, so it gives us a count, a sum of all the closed one deals. The create date is completely correct, and the filter we put on for the pipeline that we want to track. Easy peasy like that. All right, next up we're going to have new cache. And you know what I'm thinking? Maybe it's just faster if I just say save as new report instead of have to go back to dashboard, clone one, go into that one. So let's just try this. New cache. So of course this is all the new business that's coming in. So new clients coming in, bringing cash into the business. We can use one called closed deal amount, and I suggest doing it in your home currency. So if you have multiple currencies, if you're selling in, I don't know, in euros and US dollars and British pounds and whatever currency, if you have multiple currencies in Hubspot and are using them, then take this one, with the amount in home currency. So we will take all the different currencies, recalculate it into your primary home currency. Instead of the create date, we're gonna look at the close date. Quarterly. And again, for the filters, make sure it's the correct pipeline. So that's the new sales, new cash. Okay. The next one is going to be really easy now that we have created this one. And that's the average cash close. Meaning, of course, what is the average amount that we close in deals? So maybe you have some deals that is $1,000, another deal is $2,000, another deal is $5,000. If it's not just always the same deal amount, this would make sense, because then this will show you how much cash you in average take into the business when you close a deal. So all we're gonna have to do here is just, instead of the sum of the closed deal, we can actually go ahead and say the average and then apply that. And there you have it. This is the KPIs. And then we're going to touch on the graphs afterwards. Another thing I like to do is, there's this last spot over here that's just empty. Just it messes with my mind. If you saw actions, add images, text or video. Inside the content box, there's an option down here to insert an image. Okay, so for example, I'm just gonna put in my fancy logo, which is the purple one. I'm gonna add that here. You get the point. It's a little too big right now, so I guess I can minimize it. Yes, sir. Save changes. Look at that. This is becoming a really nice looking dashboard, actually. All right, next up, we're going to touch on the graph that's coming below. From your dashboard now, when we have the KPI set up, to make the graphs is actually super simple. What you do again is you just want to make a clone of it. And then I like to call this a graph, so you know the difference between them. The reason why I like to put that on is that if you just named it new leads, just as this one, it's going to be super confusing when you go to your reports library and then skim through the names, right? So now I have a new leads, let's see, new leads, graph and new leads, right? So sometimes it's easier to come in here, edit it, a lot of reports, you can go in and then customize, go straight into where you customize it. But wouldn't it be a pain if it's just two reports named new leads and you had to guess which one is the graph one? So to change from KPI to a graph, it's actually quite simple. You probably have guessed it. You go up here to the charts, you pick the line, boom, it is now a graph. You just want to pull in again the create date, which was here before, and you want to have this one down by a compare by, and you put it quarterly. And here's the difference. The compare by and the breakdown by is quarterly, but the x-axis create date is not quarterly. This one is weekly. And you can put an LI behind this, so it says weekly. So here you can see create date weekly, count of contacts up here. That's how you do it. Okay, so I'm just quickly going to go through the other graphs, because now you get the hang of it. You clone the KPI, you change it into a chart, you make sure the right variables is at the right places. So let's do that quickly. Okay, next up, book calls graph here. Line chart, x-axis create date weekly. Make sure that's weekly here. You can put in the name weekly. Breakdown and compare by create date. Again, if I just delete these ones and then pull in the create date, down by compare by is also going to place in the breakdown by. So just do this once. set that to quarter, and you notice now when I make the create date by quarterly, the x-axis create date will also change to quarterly. So we just have to make sure we go back, say weekly, like that, and then we have it. Okay, qualified book calls, it's the same here, create date weekly, book calls, create date. There's really no difference from the KPI, just making sure that, you know, the variables is at the right places here. Set a qualified book calls, same here. Filters is the same. Show up rate, activity date, weekly, average outcome completed. It's completely the same as the KPI chart. Breakdown by activity date by quarter. Sales taking calls, it's just completely the same. So basically you just continue
And then
until you get to make all the graphs here from the KPIs you just made. Okay, so let's quickly set up the CSM taking calls, the CS deals count, and the CSM new cash collected KPI charts here. We're gonna have to do a setting first. To make the CSM taking calls happen, I suggest doing this. We go in and we go to our settings. We want to go down to the the meetings tool. Make sure you activate track call and meeting types, and I'll show you why. This will give you the option to have to say what type of meeting it was. So we can have one called customer success, for example. Since our CSM taking calls reminds us of the sales taking calls, let's just go ahead and clone that. CSM taking calls, save and add. Super simple, CSM taking calls. The difference here is that the activities meetings name is none of this one, but we can use the call and meeting type to filter out customer success, like that, right? So that's one way you can do it. I would suggest doing that because you probably don't want your customers to book a time through the meeting link. You could do that, and then you could filter it by the name of the meeting link, like we did with the sales calls and the set of sales calls. But the good thing about Hubspot is that it synchronizes your calendar with Hubspot. So if you plan a meeting with your customer, that can be logged onto Hubspot automatically, and you can then go into the system and say this call was a customer success call. And that's one way you can track the data. And we're gonna go back. And the next one is the CS deals count, where we're gonna see all the deals that are being created for existing customers. Okay, so we're gonna edit the deals closed count we had from the sales KPIs. So instead of the closed one, we're not going to use that. We're just going to have a deals count. So go out and we have the deals as a primary data source. That's great. We're going to have a count. It's right here. Count of deals. And now the very important difference is, of course, we need to have the filter of the pipeline here. So I have a sales pipeline only. So for this to make sense, you actually have to go out and then create a customer success pipeline where you have your customer success managers put in the deals when there's an opportunity to upsell or renew your existing clients. So make sure you go back and then create a deals pipeline just for the customer success managers. And you could just call it the CS pipeline, for example. All right, and the next one is the CSM new cash collected. We can go ahead and copy the sales new cash. The only thing we're gonna have to change here is the filters, which we're gonna again make sure it's the CS pipeline. Now I haven't created one on this test account, but make sure you pick the right pipeline, the customer success pipeline. And then besides from that, you want to make sure that it is, of course, a one deal and not just reflecting the amount of all the deals you have in there. It has to be one. So we set is closed one is equal to true. then we have the correct amount, and that is actually the only thing you need to do.
And then the ascension and renewal rates, full transparency, this number's not up yet, but I put it as a placeholder here, only because we have clients inside of Asana, and then we have cash inside Hubspot, so we're trying to figure out how do we read this. But my goal is to have an ascension renewal rate and to have that as a KPI at 30%.
As Ravi is mentioning here, this calculate ascension/renewal rates, they haven't even figured out themselves yet just how to make that KPI visible in HubSpot. And to give you some idea, the problem is that they have all their current clients in another software called Asana. It's like a project management software, which is very normal. Using HubSpot, it's not the best for project management. So as soon as you get a client, you win the deal in HubSpot, and then you transfer that data over to your project management system where you have your customer success managers, project managers, etc., actually doing the service delivery for your business within those softwares. That's why we are not looking into that. We're not building that KPI at this moment. If you guys have any ideas how to do that, if you guys have solved this in your business, I would love to know it. Please comment down below. So here you see a dashboard for a client. It's blurred out, of course, because I'm not going to show his data online. He doesn't have a lot of data in here right now because he's new to HubSpot, but it's going to be looking real nice once the data starts flowing in, as it is already now. I made a dummy data picture here so you can see how it will actually look with the sales KPIs at least. And the data in here is just something that I made up and put into the picture. But this is how it's going to look for you once you set this up when you have enough data. Pretty nice overview, I would say. What do you think? Okay guys, that's actually it for the video today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got some value. I hope you got this dashboard set up for your business. I'm going to look through all the comments. I'm going to answer each one of them. So if you have any questions relating HubSpot or the dashboard or anything like that, I'm gonna make sure to answer all of them. All right. This was the first video I ever made like this, so I apologize for the bad quality of the camera and the microphone and all that. I'm still learning. If you would like to help me to make more content like this for you guys, I hope you will consider liking and subscribing maybe to this channel. It will help a lot more than you think. It will enable me to do more of this content to help you guys out. If you have any ideas for what you would like to see next, please also just comment that. I'm gonna be listening to what you guys have to say. Other than that, I just want to wish you a great day. Thank you for spending the time with me here, and I hope you're gonna have a lot of success in your business with HubSpot. Other than that, guys, thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I hope to see you in the next video. Goodbye.
Every lead becomes a treasure. CRM that brings the pleasure. Analytics on my dashboard. Marketing on full accord. It's the software I rely on. Building bridges led by Python. Every campaign feels like starlight. HubSpot, you're my delight. HubSpot, you're my savior. Everywhere I look, you're magic. Where you going? I said I'd stay true. Choose HubSpot and never falter. Grow your business, get much taller. Proven tools for modern ages. HubSpot wisdom on all pages.